Hello. So here I will start with an example about if statements to get the idea better in your heads. So the problem is we want to ask the user to enter two values for x and y. This is the x-axis, the y-axis. As a reminder, in this x-y axis, we have quadrant 1 if the point has its x is greater than 0 and its y is greater than 0. If the x was negative and the y is positive, then it is this point lies in quadrant 2. If both x and y are negative, it lies in quadrant 3. And if the x is positive, the y is negative, then the point lies in quadrant 4. So we want to write a Python program that asks the user to enter the coordinates of a point via x and y, and then your program should decide if the point is in which quadrant. So let's do the program, and we'll save it, and we'll say this is called if else example.py. Okay, so if else example. Okay, .py. So first we ask the user, so we have the value of x is equal to int and then input and enter x, give it some space, then I'll do the same and I will enter y, so y is equal to enter y. So now, as of now, the user entered the coordinates x and y. And so now what do we want to do? We want to say, I have a mistake here, sorry. Okay. So I want to have an if statement that says if the value of x is greater than 0 and the value of y is greater than 0, colon, I want to say also print quadrant 1, Q1. So this is the first. Now, else if, now I want to check if the x is greater than 0, or let's say the quadrant 2. So the x is less than 0 and the y is greater than 0. Okay, then actually here, if the x is greater than or equal to 0 and the y is greater than or equal to 0, we assume it's quadrant 1. So let's assume that even if both are 0, we assume it's quadrant 1. Then we can find another way to do it. And if we have x is less than or equal to 0 and the y is greater than or equal to 0, so now we'll assume that it is in quadrant 2. And we can continue with that. Else if the x was less than or equal to 0 and the y was also less than or equal to 0, then we will assume that it is in quadrant 3. Print quadrant 3. And finally, if else, if actually I don't have to do anything, if it is not in quadrant 1 and the quadrant 2 and the quadrant 3, then it should be in quadrant 4. Okay, so this is the end of the program, so we can try it. We have a problem here, and that's it. Okay, so we have an error somewhere. Let's see what the error is saying. The ampersand character is not allowed. Where did I put the ampersand? Let me check again. Okay, so there's no problem. So enter x, so let's say 5 and 2, it tells me it's quadrant 1, which is correct. If I said it is -5 and 2, then it is quadrant 2, and so on. If I said it is the x is 0 and the y is 5, then it's telling me quadrant 1, because the x is 0 and the y is positive. Although this is not completely true, because it lies on the x-axis, on the y-axis in this case. So if we want to fix that, we can remove all the equals. So it is strictly in quadrant 1, strictly in quadrant 2, strictly in quadrant 3, also strictly in quadrant 4, and it is in quadrant 4 if the x is positive and the y is negative. And then I can say else. I know if it is not all of these, then the point is definitely either on the x-axis or on the y-axis, or it is on the origin, on both. So I can just say, I will check for the if it is on the origin. And to do that, I need to say if the x was equal to 0 and the y was equal to 0, then I will say it is the origin, which is the 0, 0 point. And if it is not the origin, and if it is not in any of these quadrants, then it is definitely either on the x-axis or the y-axis. So I will say on one of the axes. And this will complete the program. So enter, let's say, as we said, 5 and 0. Sorry, I have so there's a syntax error somewhere. Sorry, so this should be else if, and then else if, and the last one is an else. Okay, run. So enter the x, the 5, and the 0, then it's one of the x's, which is true. I run again, and let me put 0 and 0. I know it's now the origin. I run, for example, -5 and 0. It's on one of the axes. Okay, so this is one example. If you want to try something similar to that, and it's also interesting, or we can do it now fairly quickly. If the x is greater than 0, then I know it's either in quadrant 1 or 4. So I can check first, is the x greater than 0? If yes, then I will check the y. If the y is positive, then it's in quadrant 1. Otherwise, it's in quadrant 4. Okay? I will not take all the conditions. I'll just do the quadrants. So I will remove all of this, and I'll do it in another way. So I want to say, if the x is greater than 0, then as we said, I know it's either in quadrant 1 or 4. So I will enter into the body of the if statement. But now I have another if. I want to say, if the y is greater than 0, then I know where the point is. I know that the point is in Q1. Otherwise, be careful for the indentation. Otherwise, I don't need to say if it is less than 0. I know for sure that it is in quadrant 4. Okay? So how does this work? So if the x was positive, I need to run all the statements from 5 to 8 because they are part of the if statement. Apparently, these statements also contain an if else. So I come to the if, I check the y. Is the y greater than 0? If yes, I run the print and I skip the else, because if this condition is true, I only run the statement in the if condition. I don't go to the else condition. So if the x was positive, I go inside. If the y is positive, then I print out the q1 and I come till after the else, till here. So here I will put another else, but this else is for the y. So if the y is sorry, I'll put an else if x is less than 0, else. So if the x was not positive, then definitely it's negative, then I'll jump to the else. I will not run any of these statements. I'll go to the else. Now I know that the x is negative. Then I will check. Okay, the x is negative, I'll check the y. If the y is positive, then I know. So the x is negative, so I'm here. If the y is positive, then it's quadrant 2, otherwise it's quadrant 3. So if the y is positive, I will print it is quadrant 2, output it as a string, otherwise the else it is in quadrant 3. Okay, so this ends the program. We can run to test. So let's say 2 and 5, it's quadrant 1, which is correct. Let's say -2 and, oops, what did I do? Sorry, okay. So here, so it is -2 and 5, then it's quadrant 2. So how does this work again? -2, I come here, is -2 greater than 0? No, I go to the else of that if. Okay, so this else belongs to this if. Then I come, is the y greater than 0? Yes, it is 5. I output quadrant 2. Now, what you can do, you can update the following program to incorporate, similar to the program that we just did. How can we know if the point is at the origin? How can we know if it is on the x-axis or the y-axis? So you can do this as an update on this one.